For 40 years, I've walked the line between worlds and am well versed in death. But I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Trish. This is The Missing Piece, and we are broadcasting live on New Orleans 105.3 FM and United Public Radio Network. We are also, our archives are now on Roku, as well as uploaded to almost every podcast, all your favorite podcast stations. I do want to thank Carnation for sponsoring my show, as well as the network. And I'm actually, this is the first time I've ever done this and pre-recorded a show. However, I will be in the chat room live tonight, which is also new for me, but exciting because I will be able to, as you all know, I kind of have some focus issues and can't do, multiple things at once. So I will be able to, interact and chat with you all. But tonight, I keep saying tonight. So that my new time, see, it's screwing me up now. It's like daylight, and my new time now is Tuesday, from 9 to 11 p.m. Central Time, and today it is April 25th. So I want to welcome. I'm excited to have him here actually because I recently learned something new. But I want to welcome Raymond Newsome. He is, did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, you said it correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds exactly the way it is.
I usually screw it up. So that's also a lot of firsts today for me, folks. Raymond he's had a fascination with the paranormal ever since he was a child. He's had many personal experiences and ghost stories from his family. He pre-internet days, I like that, his research was limited due to lack of books that were available at the time. However, he studied as much as possible while trying to learn about his own abilities. And he first investigated with a team in 2010. That did not work out, but a decade later, 2020, over a decade, 2021, he was thrust back into the paranormal with a different kind of personal experience, and he has investigated ever since around the country in multiple groups, and now he has also created his own group, Newsome Paranormal. The reason I invited him on my show, however, is because I discovered that he is also an author of quite a few books that sound very interesting, and I will let him tell you more about those. But welcome, Raymond. I'm excited to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I've been watching for quite a while, as you've noticed.
Yes, a big
so
fan
I'm excited
too.
to be here.
And thank you for your support. It's odd to me. I haven't had a guest in a while either. It's weird to me. Like I've been a guest on other people's shows for the past few weeks, but I haven't had anybody on mine. So it's like when somebody comes over to your house for the first time, and last time, and you don't know how to act. Like,
I understand.
So tell us about first. I guess to start at the beginning. How what was your earliest interaction with all things strange and unusual?
Probably as a kid, I had, like a lot of kids, I had an imaginary friend. But, my imaginary friend was a little bit different than some kids. We could interact in ways that most people cannot interact with imaginary friends. I could get mine up to mischief, and it did the same with me. However, they didn't stick around very long because, when you have siblings, imaginary friends usually aren't as important.
Yeah.
But then, you'd see other things like peeking around doors, catching things out of the corner of your eye, and that happened for the longest time. And when you start walking into schools for events and stuff, when you're going to new places, I used to get dizzy as soon as I hit certain buildings. And that's how I started to realize, hey, there's something going on with this building. I would, as soon as I hit the threshold, I would get dizzy. It was just for a second, but I was like, all right. And then you would see, certain things that weren't supposed to be there.
So, a few things about all of that. These imaginary friends, do you think they were true imaginary friends, a character that your young mind, manifested? Or do you think they were spirits or other elementals, entities, interdimensional beings that were interacting with you?
I mean, honestly, as young as I was, anything is possible. And I guess that's something I've always kept is just an open mind to everything. So, but when you can see them walk through walls, you
Right.
you start to wonder.
Well, I know a lot of people with their imaginary friends. Even like my daughter, um, her terminology is different because we live in a different time now. But for me, I called mine imaginary friends but I grew up in the '80s, and
Yeah.
that's how society groomed it. That's how what my parents told me they were, because my parents didn't like to talk about spirits or ghosts or anything, because honestly it scared them. And so they weren't going to say, ghosts or spirits didn't exist or anything, but they just called them my imaginary friends. So I guess that's the definition I used as well when I was little. But I was just curious, like if now that you're older, if you're able to make, a distinction between the two.
Um, Honestly, that's a little difficult at the time. But considering my family's history and things that my mother told me about what she would experience as a child and stuff, she was the only one that could sleep in a certain room. And in said room, the rocking chair every so often would start rocking by itself, or she'd feel somebody sit down beside her on the bed while she was sleeping. But it was never, something that caused fear. It
Right.
was, like a grandmother or an aunt or somebody that, used to live in that room and had passed away, and she would see her from time to time. However, said person did not like her stepfather at the time, and literally climbed in bed one night and just left great big old scratch marks down his back.
Wow.
So that was interesting stories to grow up with like that. So I even had a
Now,
great uncle that had died. What was it? 4 or 5 times and came back to life. One time in the coroner van.
wow. That's, you know, that's one thing I'm discovering as well while doing my own families. I think I was afraid to for the longest time. I've done other people's genealogy and ancestry and everything, but I just recently started diving into my own, and it's crazy the things that you find. You find out about your relatives. Um, it's like my entire however many generations have been alive. It's great. You know, but you find out cool things too, like that. Like all every time did he come back to life in the van?
No, not every time. Sometimes it was like within a couple minutes.
Oh,
But the one time they literally had him in the van, taking him to the coroner's office, and he set up.
wow.
And I
That's
actually
amazing.
knew him. I actually spent time with him.
That's
So,
really cool.
he was able to tell me about this himself. So it was a wild time.
On ancestry.com, which I have an affiliate link for them because I started using their professional. You can actually record a person's story and upload it to your research so it's in their voice, which is really neat. So in the future, if you talk to family members and you record them, and I advise everyone to do that because it's so much better coming from their own mouth, and do that to everyone, like in your family, so you actually have the true stories from their account. Um, you know, in case, because we never know what's going to happen. So,
Yeah, that's true. I like
oh,
it.
so my other, you said something interesting about buildings, and we kind of briefly discussed this before. Now, when you walked into those buildings and you got dizzy, in my own experience and research, there's numerous things that can cause. I'm trying to pinpoint, um, if it's certain, if it's narrowed down to certain things, or if it's all of them combined, because there's things that can affect that in people who are sensitive to, like, ley lines, um, any type of, if there's a lot of magnetism in the area, in
Yeah.
the soil. um
Well, it is Kentucky, so limestone is everywhere underneath the ground.
there it
But
is.
it's not,
Yep.
a constant thing. Like
Right.
when I'm on investigations, you'll have moments where the energy starts to pick up and it will make me dizzy. I'll start to, stumble and this and that. And that's how I know that, they're trying to build up energy to be able to speak to me.
Right.
However, when I'm investigating, that's the only clue I have because the rest of the time, I don't try to focus on abilities when I'm trying to collect evidence. Because at that point, it's all
Right.
scientific. It's all trying to, okay, this is what I want to gather. I need your help with this.
I think, and you're a lot like me in that manner, that most most people are either in, like, one of those research areas or another. Most mediums don't also do the scientific research or the historical or whatever. They do, like, one or the other and leave the other. But I'm the same way as you. Like, when I go to a location, initially, I will use I no tools whatsoever. I won't do any research on it. I just want to use my own intuition and kind of listen or feel the environment. Sometimes I end up drawn to those unknowingly, and then I pay attention, obviously, when that starts happening to me as well when I get there. Um, but then after that, I try to take in as much as I can, intuitively, and I take a notebook, pencil and paper, whatever. Um, and then I go back through and use, look at maps or ask about the history or research, whatever, to kind of put all of my notes together on different, the science and the mediumship, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I have friends that do research for me as well. So I don't like to know the history before I walk into a place because I don't want that to bias what
Hmm.
I'm looking for. Because just because there's a name there doesn't mean that's the name that's going to come through when I'm doing my research and investigating. So without that bias, without that, expectation, I'm a little bit more open, a little bit more free to just to see what I get, and compared to, okay, well, I have to take an F for this person.
Have you found that, um different, sorry, there's like a canine officer sitting outside my, of course.
Of course,
Anyways, have you found that, different places, different locations interact with different people differently also?
yeah, I've gone into certain places with different groups, and the interaction would be different each time. So that's always a fun aspect as well because I can say, well, I've went here with this person. Let's see how it works, and then I go with someone else. Let's see how it differentiates. So then
Huh.
I have, you know, One time it'll be real quiet, another time it'll be nonstop. So
Hmm.
that's always fun to experience.
Now, have you noticed, have you gone to places during different moon phases or different holidays, different paid attention to times, things like that?
Yeah. In fact, the last place I went to was a place in Santiago, Kentucky called Ross Opera House. I was actually helping teach a class with a group called Spirit Mechanics at Lexington. Um, and they were going to have a play the next day. Well, considering, plays were something that was very common in the opera house, the activity was so much higher than it was compared to when there's nothing set up. So since they had, the scene and everything set up on the stage, we got a lot of activity on that stage just for that reason.
I wonder, I've been to Kentucky a few times. Do you, of course, there's a lot of the more famous places that most people have heard of. Oh my gosh, it just slipped my mind. What's the asylum, the old
Waverly Hills.
tuberculosis? Yes, thank you. That's one of the places that I've never been inside of it. I went to the location way before. I mean, this was, 20 years ago, before um it was owned by anyone else, and it was all fenced off, and you couldn't act because people snuck in all the time back then.
Yeah.
So um I went there, and then I ended up, my sister and I got lost at this old courthouse um in downtown. See, I'm not from Kentucky, so I'm not going to say
Louisville.
yes. Louisville. Is that how you
Yes.
say?
But some people are like Louisville or Louisville. It's
Yes, that's how
Louisville.
I would say. But she always corrected me when I was there. But we got lost downtown there. It like we had gone out, and it was like 2 in the morning, and we got lost by this old courthouse that had probably like 10 foot tall um brick like cinder block fence around it, and a big bonfire and stuff. And I'm like, are they seriously having some sort of meeting in the middle I didn't even know that's how, like, I told you I live under a rock half the time. I had no idea that those things still went on in present day America. I don't know. Um,
Oh, there's all kinds of weird things that happen in Kentucky.
there's and then the she adopted a dog from somewhere way in the hills, and that was another whole other experience altogether. But but
Yeah.
I don't even think they had electricity in some of those towns.
Oh,
Um,
I guarantee it. Some of them don't have running water.
yeah,
It's crazy. A lot of places are still getting, public works as far as sewage and water and stuff to them.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Some of
But
them
I
don't
I
even
mean,
have
it's
blacktop
simple
roads.
though.
It's an interesting place,
I
especially because I'm on the eastern side of the state. Louisville's probably about 2.5 hours for me, depending on how fast I drive. Um, and when you get into like what they call the hollers and the backwoods and this and that and stuff, you don't know what you're going to find.
Oh yeah, it's kind of scary in some of those places if you're not familiar with it. I grew up in the mountains, um, pretty much on top of a mountain, very very remote, and I was used to it though. But the people, the few spread out cat, everybody on that mountain knew each other. So if there was someone there that didn't belong there, it was probably very intimidating for outsiders,
Yeah,
because
especially when everybody's spread out and they're kind of
yep,
watching you, and you're like, what did I wander into?
yeah, because it does, it's like scary movies. Sometimes there were um there were hitchhikers and probably like murderers and all kinds of stuff hiding out up there. They like in cabins and who knows. So it's,
I
um,
mean, a remote place is the best way to go if you're a serial killer. So,
I don't know. Then you wouldn't have a lot of, victims though. Like, what are you gonna?
well,
Unless it's like the
if
hills have
if you take
eyes.
and go through, you know, you wander out and you find your victims and you commit your crime. But once you go back into that area and there's no service, there's nothing, it's a little bit harder to trace you. It's a little bit harder to find you if you're
That's
isolated like
true.
that.
Completely off the grid. I think so. So have you been to Waverly yourself?
I have. It was December of 2021. I went right after my birthday. It's kind of like a birthday present to myself.
Of
And
this
me,
past year?
no, it was a little over a year ago,
Okay.
probably about a year and a half almost.
But
And
it's still in the time where you have to, make reservations and arrangements and
yeah, we actually went for a public ghost hunt because, that was what was available at the time. We looked out, there's only maybe about 12, 15 of us in the entire place. So it is basically empty.
wow.
The interesting part was it was during a storm, and that storm had actually created tornadoes that ripped through towns maybe 40 miles south of us. And we were in Waverly Hills, standing on top of the roof, watching the storm go by
That
because
is
we're stupid like that.
exactly why. See, I said something was going to resonate with our conversation today, and I have been considering going back to. I've been there twice now to take pictures during the day. It's a museum to Glore museum and sanitarium in St. Joseph, Missouri. They kind of mimicked Waverly at the time back in the day because they also had tuberculosis patients there, but then it became an asylum and it's connected to the prison, which is crazy there. Anyways, they have um, an entire investigation. They're actually opening up the tunnels between the two this weekend. And I just told somebody yesterday that I feel like there's a tornado coming and this is going to be a bad storm season. So see if I go to that, it'll be exactly like your investigation and
It probably will.
there'll be a tornado. So now I'm questioning whether I should go or not.
Live a little, Trish. You
I
can do
know.
it. I have faith in you. Besides, the tunnels will be open. At least you'll have somewhere safe to hide. I mean, they told us
Uh,
in the event that the tornado got close that we would all end up in the death tunnel to take in, bunker down there. You know, that whole thing is a trip in itself. The death tunnel is because
This
we started
one's
walking.
connected to a working prison. I guess I forgot to mention that. So that could
Oh
be
wow!
really good or really bad. Like I'm not sure what their safety protocols are if like the
I'm
power
sure
goes
there's a certain spot where it's like, do not go further.
if the power goes down or something, what can they I don't know. Like how does that I don't know if that's a that'd be an interesting some interesting questions to ask. But yes, the death tunnel at Waverly is very very historically famous. What did you find
Yeah.
there?
Our experience was more of a personal experience. We decided, hey, we're going to walk from the top all the way to the bottom. We walked probably 15 minutes and it felt like we didn't even get halfway. And I know it's not that long, but we never
Wow.
reached the bottom. And then we turned around and started going back up, and it felt just as sluggish to go back up the steps as it did go down. So it almost felt like a time loop there, and we were just stuck, and it was like walking through mud up to your knees.
Oh, that's interesting. Um, I've never heard that about that tunnel, but it makes sense. I was just bridges a lot do that to me. I was just on a bridge recently driving, and I told my daughter, I'm like, doesn't it seem like this like it doesn't look very long, when you're on one side of it, and then when you're on it, it seems like it takes literally forever to cross, and it's not
Yeah,
that long. It's not even a mile, I don't think. Um, but the death tunnel, for those of you that don't know, they used to transport bodies through the tunnel to the road, correct? Because the
yes,
buildings actually set back from the highway. And so they didn't want to disturb, especially when I think it was more so for the tuberculosis retreat, because they didn't want to. I think that had
that
better
was a way
intentions,
to take and
obviously.
keep, how many people are dying more private than,
Right.
everybody realized how many people were actually being taken out.
I think when they opened it as a tuberculosis retreat, they did have better care and better intentions and things like that. From my research, before it became the asylum, when you hear about the
And
abuse
nursing
there,
home.
well,
Yeah.
and overcrowding and things like that. So I think when they opened it for that, it was for the TB patients to be out in the country and breathe fresh air, and that back then was how that was their treatment, right? I think.
That and they had surgeries, and some of those surgeries were kind of, they were a little bit barbaric, but
For
they had the best
tuberculosis.
intentions. Yeah, like removing ribs and stuff to allow the lungs to expand, more to try to help them breathe, and yeah, it was crazy.
I question our past. That's one thing. You'll have to. I don't know how far. Well, I know Louisville. Louisville is it's probably like 8 hours from me or something. I don't know. I used to go visit my sister there, but um, so Glore would be even closer than that. It'd be like 6 hours. You should go there sometime because the designers, the people who contributed to the museum, they have replicas of every device or the different surgical equipment and stuff that they use at some of the more famous places like Waverly in that museum. And it tells all the history about all of it.
Oh, very
So
cool. Yeah,
it's
definitely.
really creepy that because you get to see these actual, some of the things that they thought would work back then, which is nowadays.
We'd be like, why would you even try that?
Right. I'm gonna post those sometime on my website because I took so many pictures. It was just a few
And what's
weeks
funny
ago.
about this conversation is not long ago, I've already booked my vacation for next year, and it's Branson, Missouri.
So Branson, oh, so Missouri has. I'm gonna have to make you a list of, misery loves company is what they call it,
Yeah.
the state. So but there are so many places that aren't very well known or famous, um, that I know
Those
about
are my
because
favorite types.
yeah, because my a lot of my family were from there, not recently, but in the 1800s and things like that I've discovered these places. Just there's a lot of really small towns, and then there's people don't realize that. So like southern Missouri, down where Branson um is where a lot of the mountainous areas kind of start before you get into
Yeah.
Arkansas. And so it's a lot more. It's not like northern Missouri where it's still kind of
Flat.
flat. And yeah, so there's so many caves. There's uh,
What was that
government
that shot across your
experiments.
screen there? There was like something black that shot across your screen.
Spirits, I don't know. It happens a lot. I didn't see it.
I mean, it is. Whenever you
There's
play this
nothing
back
on
later, I'm
my
sure you'll see
screen.
it. No, it like literally shot at an angle
Hmm. Yeah. I,
from your left side basically to your right. You know, had a downward diagonal angle there. It was interesting.
I don't know. It happens a lot though on my show for some reason. It's like It's like they,
You start talking about it, and they're like, "Hey, they're talking about us. Let's show
right?
up." I have
I
a
always
ghost
tell
pet
people
that runs
that
around my house, so
people, it's funny to me that people, and this really confused me when I was younger because I was like, why do people only think that spirits come out at night? They are all, they don't go anywhere. Like,
yeah,
they're still here. During the day, you just can't see them as well because it's bright,
yeah.
it's it's and a lot of it's quieter at night. So our senses are more amplified naturally because there's less um human pollution. So oh, I think it was an ant, which I don't know where that came. My window was open earlier. I don't know where that came from. Might have been this little ant crawling across my screen, but that's
That might be it.
um where are you going in Branson?
Um, Honestly, wherever I decide to go that week, it's I booked a hotel. That's where I'll stay, and then I just kind of venture out from there and check things out in the area. That's how I
I've
always do
been
vacations.
I've been doing recently. I was going to go to Branson sometime soon. I've been wanting to for years, but they most recently opened up. There's a Titanic replica there, an
Yes,
actual
the Titanic
Titanic
Museum.
replica. And that's actually said to be really haunted too because they have a lot of the artifacts from the wreckage. And but this is just recently, I believe just this year, the end of last year, they started allowing people to film and take pictures in there. And as a photographer, I was like, wow, that would be so cool too. They have the grand staircase um and a lot of things that would be really neat.
They have
So
a second location too in Pigeon Forge,
really,
Tennessee. Yeah,
huh? Yeah, I didn't know about that one. I just found out about the Branson one like a year ago. So
another fun spot in Pigeon Forge is the Alcatraz East Crime Museum.
yeah.
It it has like medieval torture devices all the way up into modern times, and it even includes certain vehicles like O.J. Simpson's Bronco, one of the VW Bugs that
Wow.
Ted Bundy drove. Yeah, so it
That's
has some
interesting.
interesting
That's
ones.
really cool.
And then they have a 9/11 room
There's
which I cannot walk into. So
oh, yeah, that one would be hard. Um
I started to turn toward the door and had to hit the wall because the energy coming out of that room was too much. Nope. And here I am standing in the middle of a
it's
bunch of people,
sad.
and I'm like, nope, 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 and I just walk around.
I think of every single year, you know, um, like I don't know how old you are, but our generation, like, obviously remembers the impact that had and the tragedy that it was. But it hasn't been, in the grander scheme of things, it hasn't been that long ago. And
Yeah,
every year, it's like everybody already forgot, and that's sad. And some um even my kids, they're my daughter's 9. So in schools, they don't she had, without me telling her, she would have no idea what happened. They've
yeah.
already forgotten. So
I don't know if
I
it's that
think,
they've
which is
forgotten, it's that they want to forget.
exactly. And that's another thing that was big for me and that I've been doing a lot of, I volunteering and stuff for preservation of record keeping. Because April is the National Preservation Importance Month for historical documents or stories or artifacts, things like that. And that's why it's important, because if we forget things that have happened, we're just going to continually repeat them over and over. And then you go into the whole like prison planet theory and stuff with that. So if we ever want to get out of that, then we need to remember. um and I think that goes back to like the shadow work, and stuff that we
Yeah.
were talking about that people do.
It's like we also have to
It's basically
admit
the
that
world's
these
shadow
things
work.
happen in
And
order to deal with them.
exactly. And to be able to confront that and take accountability, because it, I've even started making a list. And I will also link that one of these days on my site, because um all the books that are being banned from libraries,
Yeah,
um it, you know these, some of them aren't, not all of them are history books, but a lot of them are, and a lot of them are historically accurate history books. And because they might offend one culture or another, they're just completely removing them from libraries. And I get that those things are offensive in a manner that, if it was your ancestors or relatives, or I understand that completely, but it's doing no one any good if they're just completely destroyed. So
yeah. It
I
doesn't
think
do
I
any
think a
good
lot
if
of the
you
spirit,
ignore. If you want to say, "Oh, well, this triggers me," we had to remove it. It's like, why does
right?
it trigger me, and what does it really mean to my
Hmm.
people and the human race in general? So, we had to remember these things, accept these things in order to take and be able to move past them.
Do you think, I've thought about this a lot lately, like the increase in spirit, like unrest spirits and spirit activity and stuff in the last few years. I don't think that it was that people weren't paying attention or weren't being affected to it before. I think a lot of it, I know for myself, when I'm called to certain things, it's because we are destroying all these things. These spirits want justice. They want us to keep,
They
fighting for
want
them,
their
getting
story
the truth
told.
out.
Yes.
Exactly. So have you found that as well in the last few years, that um sometimes it's because we're destroying historical sites or religious sites or what have you?
Yeah, I've found that I get more activity when I walk in. I say, "I came here for your story. So I am here to be able to share your story. So that's why I hope that you will speak to me." And then it doesn't matter where I'm at, I will start getting activity. And, I get a lot of voices, I get a lot of EVPs and stuff just because these spirits want to talk. You know, they have something to say. And, even though you'll experience angry spirits and this and that, it does not mean that they're anything other than they're just mad.
Right.
And considering how things are changing and the way that people are trying to change them, they have a lot of reason to be. It's like
Hmm.
you're trying to deny what I went through to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, that's I've kind of discussed that a lot with people. Spirits are that were once human anyways. Well, even otherwise, can experience trauma just like anyone else. So, um, it's important to be mindful of that. Now, I know you're involved in the global ghost hunt, correct?
Yes. And actually,
And
the location I went to was Octagon Hall because I pre recorded. So
okay. How does so
that
when is the and I apologize for not keeping up with it. When is the actual event?
it starts May 4th and it runs through May 14th.
That's coming up.
Yeah, we have 10 days with a bunch of teams running around looking for ghosts. And I love it. It's a phenomenal idea, and I love every bit of it. And I get to work with the locations, and that's just even better to me. It's like I get to meet the people that run these historical places, and that was
I
one of the
think
reasons. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's funny. The second you started talking about that, you start cutting out, of course.
Of course, um, but
Yes.
yeah, I chose Octagon Hall for its history and for the known activity and stuff there. And that's why I wanted to share it with the world. And
Now,
what
where is Octagon Hall?
it is in Franklin, Kentucky. So it is, if you head south on 65 from Louisville, it is right outside of Bowling Green. So it's almost to Tennessee.
Okay, so the southern.
Yeah, the southwestern end of the state. It's right down there. It's an hour from Nashville, if that tells you anything.
Now, is there a specific reason you pre-recorded or just personal? I mean, like, did you do it because you wanted to participate in others, or
No, I did it because, with my time availability and this and that, I had a certain, time period where I could do it freely without having to worry about, other
no,
schedules.
and
And
that's
so,
that's what I was wondering, if it
yeah.
was because of something like that, or because, like, for me, what's intimidating about that is how much energy is going to be, um I guess, working during that time period.
Yeah.
For me, it would
Well, that
be
that also helps too,
overwhelming.
because that way, if I'm needed for something else, I'm free because I'm not out investigating during.
Right. That makes sense. Um, there's another place. There's so many. So it's funny how much we have a new host on our network, Emily Men's House, who she does What the Frick,
Yeah,
um, and she's from Kentucky.
I'm pretty sure she's not far from where I'm from. So,
Well, and it's funny because everyone from Kentucky like mirrors everything there, mirrors Kansas also, which makes sense because we both have KU, and we
yeah.
all, but there's a lot of very, very similar locations too, as far as um historical locations and haunted locations. And Topeka, we have the historical Meningers, which was at well Topeka was like the historical, um what did they call it, the mental health capital of the world at one point. um and not always good. The Topeka State Hospital in Meningers did some very, very terrible things. Like, I recently learned that it's like the high school here is on top of about 5,000 bodies buried. There's it's it's
Wow.
crazy, crazy, which
Sounds like
explains to
Galveston,
everyone.
Texas too.
Texas, oh gosh, Texas is
Galveston,
another one of those states that's,
Galveston is nothing but, you know, a city built on top of a cemetery.
yeah. And that's, when they say bleeding Kansas, that term referred more to, you know, during, well, right after the Civil War, but it also makes sense in present day, because aside from all of the Native American deaths and all of the uh, mental institution deaths and things like that, just all of the terrible things that happened here were also like the exact middle of the United States. So all the settlers who came through here usually died in the winter time also. So there's that. there's um but I found there's so many things in Kentucky, they're exactly like that. And it's really interesting, um how they all kind of mimic each other.
Oh yeah, because Octagon Hall was, right there in the middle of the Civil War. It was even used as a hospital during the Civil War at one point.
Interesting.
And before we even got started, we were interacting with a soldier that was hanging out in the lounge area that was a Confederate soldier, and he was, about 28, 29 years old. And at one point, we had a buddy with us who is former military, and he was just sitting there having a conversation, just talking to him. And at one point, he reaches in his pocket and holds out a letter because he wanted us to deliver it.
Wow.
So
I kept this whole for like the last 5 minutes, I've been hearing something about a cannon. Cannon. Maybe that has to do with that. But did you experience something on that
we did,
specific trip
actually.
with a cannon?
We did
Huh.
during an Estes method in the sick room. That'll be on a different recording. Unfortunately, that wasn't during my recording for Global Ghost Hunt, but I will share that afterward. I'm just not going to post too many videos of it before it airs, including the video of me doing an Estes method for almost 50 minutes.
Wow. I don't think I could do that. I
I
would
thought it was 15 or
probably
20 minutes whenever they brought me out. I went
um
that deep into it.
I would probably have a seizure or something, unfortunately, or my nose starts bleeding and stuff. But um oh my gosh, that keeps bothering me about they said you're missing something. You're missing something about the canon. I don't know why that's relevant. Like it's that's just very strong right now. Scotch
Interesting.
maybe it was some like drinking and a cannon. Was there? Oh wait, Kentucky. Kentucky makes
Bourbon.
bourbon.
Yeah.
No, but that's which one is it? Um, who manufactures? Is it not Jack Daniels? What's the
Jim Beam.
Jim Beam? Yes. Maybe illness and Jim Beam, illness and alcohol and Scotch, which maybe Scottish, maybe that's what they're saying. Paperwork, something you have. I don't know. They're trying to like you're missing something. Why are they coming through to there? It's something about that specific plate investigation, I guess.
I mean, I still have tons of, evidence to go through, so hopefully there are some hints into that. But it was,
So maybe he's not missing it. He just hasn't come across it yet.
yeah. Give me some time. There's over 200 gigs worth of audio and video
Oh
just
wow.
from that one load. Yeah,
That's a lot.
because I had
Sorry.
4 cameras and like 3 or 4 different audio or digital recorders going at the same time throughout the building.
Maybe you had a Canon. Do you have a Canon camera? Like the
I
brand?
did. I did. I had a digital camera that was a Canon, but I didn't use it.
Huh. I don't know what that has to do.
But
Sorry, that was just
I had
very
other
loud.
friends
I don't
that
know what
had
they
cameras as well, so that were using, regular digital cameras. I think they had Canons as well. So
Sorry, that was usually I don't relay those things immediately that they're yelling at me
when
for,
they're
but
screaming at you, you
yes,
don't have
but
a choice.
that one was very 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 relevant. Um yeah, I got all kinds of like forest and a cannon and which, then we were talking about the war, but this was very specific, like something I don't know. Because I'm not even familiar with that site, so I couldn't, I don't know what they're trying to.
I mean, there are trees right there, but there's not really a forest anymore. But there might have been at that time because now a lot of it's been cleared out for farmland and stuff.
Stream. There's a Maybe a stream nearby?
I know there's an underground stream.
Mineral springs? Does that
Yeah, because part of the Mammoth Caves runs underneath the location.
Mammoth Caves?
Yeah,
That's interesting. I was having dreams about Mammoth Caves and I didn't know where it was a few months ago for a while.
yeah, it's not that far from Octagon Hall, and part of the
Huh.
cave system does run underneath of it. But as far as big
Oh,
as Mammoth Caves really is, it they expand quite far. So
maybe there's someone went missing um in those caves and that's the whole I don't know.
well, there used to be a tunnel underneath the house too, which is collapsed now, so we couldn't get down there.
Huh.
Maybe someone feels trapped down there.
Maybe. I hope it's not someone, usually when that happens to me, it's someone who's still living, um, that's missing or like who's still alive in that area that hasn't been found yet. But the cannons and stuff, unless they're referring to a camera, I don't have a Canon, so I know it's not mine. Um,
There's not a cannon on the property either, so not that I noticed.
um,
But we did get a lot of discussion of cannon fire and stuff through Estes, through spirit boxes. So
that was my phone just lit up for some weird notification, so that was confirmation. Maybe it's on that you haven't discovered yet.
I
I don't know.
mean, yeah, we'll go back. Like I said, we're still going through it. I have several helpers trying to help go through all that audio and video and stuff. So
I could probably they usually if they give me like they usually give me like a time a time
yeah,
mark on the to refer to or something or like a range. Um I haven't gotten that. I don't know that I know of.
that might come to you
No.
later.
Yeah. So, okay. So the most exciting thing, well, first off, I do want to, for a minute, you are listening to New Orleans 105.3 FM on United Public Radio Network. And again, I do want to thank Carnation for sponsoring my show as well as the network. And we are here recording live with Raymond Newsome from Kentucky, United States. Um, so we've talked about the paranormal and all of those before I allow um, any spirits that tried to get your attention to take over here. um,
I mean, yeah, it happens to me too. I get it.
I tell you, but usually it's only I usually only allow that if it's something. It must be something pretty important. So um,
What's
I
funny is
want
that
so
it
your
came through
books.
after I discussed the soldier that we were talking about that had the letter,
Well,
because
yeah,
that was
I because
basically his
I had
last
been
letter
thinking of
saying that he wasn't
canon.
going to make it home.
Oh, I just see. There goes. I heard the traveling soldier song.
Yeah. So that's probably how he died.
So the letter, where did the letter actually, the guy staying there that pulled out the letter, was that one that he found somewhere or one that he like used
That was
automatic
one that he
writing or
had on his
something or
purpose, on his person. I think he meant to send it out and didn't get the chance to. It was his letter
oh,
saying, "I'm
okay.
not going to make it home."
I see. So that makes sense with it saying missing and um That's all. Yeah, that's all I got from that. Maybe you're anything else, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Sometimes that so when you get messages from spirits, intuitively or through various clairs, how do they come through to you?
It honestly just depends on the spirit. Some I physically see with my eyes. Sometimes, it's just a voice, a whisper, and then other times, it's just that intuitive, it's like a feeling, but you can see it as well.
Hmm.
It's like the, emotions and stuff are so strong that it gives a physical shape inside your head to where you can see it. Like whenever he held the letter out, I was actually able to, pick up what kind of letter it was and basically what it said. Because whenever I mentioned it and stuff, he hung his head. Like, yeah, that's what it
Now,
is.
so were you able to recreate that? I mean, through like, and you don't have to tell us what it is since you haven't published that yet, but through like automatic writing or whatever.
Um, Not automatic writing, but I do, especially when I'm writing, it's more stream of conscious. It's I see what's happening, I hear what they're saying, and I write it down. So that's basically how I write my books.
So, I I kept hearing ant. So the ant, that crawled across my screen.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's what went across the camera, but there was an ant on the side of my computer since I'm
I
right
don't
by
think it
my
was
window.
because it was way too fast for an ant.
So that kept the little ant though. I'm like, why now? What's with the ant, and what does that have to do? And then I thought of Lady Antebellum. Well, I didn't realize. I just looked it up. Um, Antebellum means before a war, and the term's been widely associated with the pre-Civil War period in the United States when slavery was practiced. I didn't know that. So maybe that's relevant as well. Maybe it was pre-Civil War.
Maybe. I mean, people did live in that house. That was an actual home until the Confederates took it over to be their hospital.
Um, I wonder. And so obviously most conspiracy theorists and everything, as far as well, obviously witches anyways, know that there's a lot, as well as native cultures, anything with specific shapes um, represent specific things. And so if that's, is it actually shaped like an octagon? I mean, I
Yes.
assume from the name.
Yeah, it's actually shaped like an octagon.
So so there could be a lot having to do with that as well, as far as the
I think
families that lived
that's
there
one of the
before.
reasons why, I think they're so, I guess, layered is the correct word. Because, an octagon is almost a full circle. So it's basically like a cylinder that you just run around in. And it's a little bit harder to get out than if it was, four walls. And a lot of them said that they weren't even allowed outside of the building.
Wow. I think so. There's a thing called octagon books that talks about the Scotch plains and Native American slavery, which so this Octagon Books company, they publish these history books, which I didn't know. Again, this is from the UK, UK. We are just, but anyways, um,
It's always fun to watch it run around and around and around in circles.
well, but it talks about Kentucky and the natives who were slaves as well. From with the Scottish, so maybe that has to do with.
That's possible because it was native land beforehand, and let's face it, a lot of Scotch and a lot of Irish and stuff definitely moved into the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, a
That's
big part of
interesting.
my lineage is Scotch, Irish, and British.
Have you ever done your own um, ancestry?
My mom started working on it, and she got up to the 1600s, I think,
Oh wow.
and it was when a Scotch man married an Irish woman.
Um, it's interesting because only within the last few years, I would say, did other, especially European libraries and such, historical societies and everything start um, digitally transcribing historical documents. So there's a lot of stuff now that you couldn't find, even 1 or 2 years ago, like different ship um, immigration listings and records and birth certificates and all kinds of stuff that weren't there before. Um, so I'm wondering, I think a lot of people are finding lost ancestors, but I'm finding that a lot of them also changed their names and did weird,
Yeah,
because there were a lot of things like divorce wasn't allowed, but so if two people separated, I know somewhere down my family line, two people separated, well, obviously they didn't get a divorce, so they both continued living their own lives, but one said she was widowed and another one, so or they remarried and said they were never married, things like that. So it's
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, it is. Just be all because um people cared so much what others thought, back then, and well, they still do. So um I'm not one of those people, but but um back in the day, it did make record keeping a little bit hard, as well as being a medium, trying to
Yeah,
transcribe some of the messages you get are somewhat difficult.
like one thing in my family, the story is my father's father's father, my great paternal great grandfather on his dad's side, was born in Butcher Holler, which everybody knows
Wow.
what Butcher Holler is. Loretta Lynn, Crystal Gale, they all came out of Butcher Holler. And then he was adopted by a Newsome, which is why we had the last name Newsome. I did a 23andMe. One of the relatives that popped up that was, like the third or fourth cousin has the last name Butcher on the paternal side. So apparently there is some truth to that he
Wow.
did come from Butcher Holler and, was adopted by Newsome. And then on my grandmother's side, his mother's side, her mother came from Holland and then married a gentleman with the last name Wagner. And it was so funny because he's like 6'2" and she's maybe 5 foot at best. And there's a picture with him sitting in a chair, sitting there, and she's standing next to him and barely comes up to his shoulder standing there. So she was a
Wow.
tiny lady.
That's like my
And I was
sister.
the last great grandchild that she got to see after they were born before she passed away.
That's really neat.
In fact, I have one of her handkerchiefs. That's what my Archangel Tarot deck is wrapped in. Is that handkerchief. So.
Oh no. I heard something about that too.
Oh, I'm just taking you down a rabbit hole today, Trish. I'm
No,
sorry.
she said something about you need to do more of that. Healing others will heal you. See, that's totally not. I don't know where that came from. So healing others will heal you, and there's something that you don't even know, some type of gift that you don't even know you have yet that you're not utilizing.
I'm working on it.
That she also. Oh, see, I got the chills. That she also had. So, yeah.
Well,
Is the
I'm
handkerchief,
I'm working on it. So I'm getting there.
is it like, is it embroidered or something on it? There's something.
There's like a floral design on it. It's not embroidered, but it does have a design on it.
Maybe that's what I was saying.
I can get it for you.
Well, it was just that was another mess. Apparently, um,
It was just in the other room.
you're hard-headed when she tries to communicate with you.
I'm sorry. It comes naturally. I really, you know how us
She
kids
just
are.
literally, I heard "boy comes by it honestly" or something like
See,
crazy. That's funny.
um, I wasn't lying when I said I come by honestly. It runs in the family.
So I don't know if other people. I mean, and maybe it's different for.
There's the handkerchief.
Yeah, that's really pretty. Yeah, that's what. Um, I don't know if other people realize this, but or even if other mediums, maybe other mediums do things differently. But I mean, I have communicated obviously with my own ancestors a lot, but it's one of those things. I don't do it very often because we do. It's kind of like when your mom's yelling at you and because you're doing something wrong and you don't listen, so you just kind of drown out that voice. That's how I
Yeah.
am with my own relative, like my own ancestors, not on purpose, not intentionally. It's just one of those things I naturally do. I can pick up on everyone else's ancestors, whatever, except
But
my
when
own.
it comes to your own family, you kind of naturally tune them out
Exactly.
because it's like your mother nagging at you for to go clean your room,
Yes.
and you just want to sit and
Yep.
play video games or something. It's not on purpose. It's just after a while you develop a selective hearing.
And that's why when people who aren't, mediums or don't communicate with spirits, they're like, why are you telling another person who communicates with spirits themselves something about their own ancestor? Well, for that reason, because we don't listen to our own. Like, sometimes you have to hear it through someone else to actually get to the person when it comes to your own family. It's
Yep,
funny how that works.
it really is.
I Which brings me to your book. So one of them was about angels and demons and wolves, correct?
Yes, it's called Rise of the Fallen, and it actually has serial killers involved too. Um, I take it on a great big old rabbit hole. That's just how I am because the further I dig, the deeper I get. And the story actually began as just a book about a serial killer, and it started out with an idea and a list of names, and it just developed into something just grander and so much better than what I originally intended. And I love it for that. It, the evolution in it, and it follows a character all the way through where he's being, forced into, I guess, an unofficial bloodletting of people that he causes to fall in love with him in order to take it and break the seal that held them prisoners so that these fallen angels that, had become demons could take over Earth.
So I so my perspective on angels and demons is a little probably different than most people's because I think it's all about perspective. I think um I always give the reference to Hellraiser, because he's holding the gift. And literally, that I used to have that poster. I'm gonna put it back up when I move. That where it says an angel to some, a demon to others.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in life, we consider people who are catalysts that make us um that we think something, they come into our lives and create something really what we consider very tragic or bad or negative or what have you. And then but it ends up,
Being
you
something
know,
that you needed to learn and become something positive.
or to be able to actually move and grow, in life. And so I also have kind of a reputation for, there's haunted places that I'll go to. They're extremely active, and a lot of people might be affected by demonic entities in that same place or what have you. And I'm not. And they're like, well, does that mean you're a demon, Trisha? I mean, I do have red hair, but you know, we're soulless entities. So just kidding.
That is
But
actually the
no.
second time I've heard that today.
I used to hear it all, that people used to make fun of me all the time, and say that. But no, I think to me, I don't consider, I don't know how to say this, to not convey, like, I don't consider such things as good or bad, because everything,
Has the
well, it's kind
potential
of
for
like
good or
history
bad.
books. It depends on who's telling the story. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's always, we're all the
Everything has the
villain in
potential for
someone's
good or evil.
story.
Yes.
Exactly. So there's a lot of places that I'll go into, and everybody's like, well, I was possessed there. Why didn't that demon, like, you communicated with the same thing? Why didn't it affect you? Well, either A, I've already conquered that specific demonic entity in my own life, or and that's a whole other story to get, like, whole other uh topic to get into, but or I used to consider spirits like it's like customer service. I used to do a lot of I used to work with highly delinquent borrowers on student loans. and be really good at de-escalating them. And really, it gets down to, uh-oh, lost him for a minute. Did I lose you?
No, you froze.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Somebody doesn't want us talking.
You're frozen.
What's funny is you were frozen on my side, so.
Okay.
Am I still here? Can you see me? No. I don't know what happened. Yeah. I lost you, Trish. Come back. Hey, there you are.
Oh goodness, I left you.
I know. I
Oh,
was like,
now we have.
come back, Trish.
I
Is it
wonder.
any
I hope
better?
it didn't. What's that?
It still says it's recording, so it's still live.
Yeah, yeah. It changed the background changed, but that's fine.
I
That's
see that.
fine. Um. So we apologize. Every time I start talking about demons, I tell you, I get kicked off the air.
I understand.
I'm not trying to. Well, I was saying something positive about the demonic community. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Not all are necessarily as evil as people make them out to be.
Honestly, the our hierarchy of the demonic legion want nothing to do with humans. They
Oh
don't.
yeah,
They could care
that's what I
less.
was gonna say.
And in all honesty, most of them, have taught something or another.
Yeah, usually it's the much lower. Um,
It's the
a lot of the
peons that
things
want
that
to make a
mess
name for
with,
themselves.
yeah, a lot of the things that mess with people, first of all, aren't actually demonic at all. Half of them aren't even human at all. Some, are poltergeist. Well, many shadow people and poltergeist activity is a manifestation of our own energy and our own trauma and
Yeah.
our own negative thoughts and negative. People don't realize how powerful your own self-talk is,
Self
or how
manifestation is a thing.
exactly. Or, say I have, which I don't really hold grudges. I don't have enemies that I, you know, um, exert any negative energy to. So, but say I did, people don't realize that if you're constantly thinking about like hate or hating someone or something, that will
Yeah.
manifest into an actual being. Like, well,
Yeah.
not living obviously, but it will manifest in your life, and nobody realizes that until it actually happens. So I always tell people to be
If you
very
don't care,
careful of.
can I have just a moment? I'll be right back.
Oh yeah,
I apologize.
it's fine. You were kind of cutting out there for a minute. Um, so it's important to cognitively be aware of how you talk to yourself, how you talk to others, and people in your family, because you'll manifest your own monster, quite literally. Um, that becomes this thing that takes over in your life, and so um, I think also um, there's a really it's kind of like, I think when it comes to angels and demons, it's kind of like anything powerful that we consider powerful, that has the ability to be evil or vicious. Think of like a dog. Think of like pit bulls, for example. I um Pit bulls can be the sweetest. I have owned a pit rot mix before that was the absolute sweetest dog you'll ever see in your life. And um but then you see they get such a bad reputation because people train them that way. People abuse them and treat them and train them to be evil. Well, I think the same goes for many entities when um not that they're mistreated, but due to things that happen in their life, they have the ability to go one way or the other, good or evil. Again, I don't necessarily consider things good or evil. I think there's necessary evils. Um, are you
Hey, I'm
back?
back.
I think there's necessary evils. I don't know if you listen. I was comparing like
There.
angels and demons to like a pit bull. It has the
Yeah,
ability to be good or evil. I mean, sure, it can be evil and do bad things. Yes, could be in very much lower vibrational. But when you start talking about things like that, once they get to that status, it's something that's been around for a very, very long time. So they already know and are very aware of the repercussions of things they do.
yeah.
So,
Well, also with, especially animals like pit bulls, a lot of people are just naturally intimidated by the size of most pit bulls
yeah,
because they're just, they're solidly built. They're just powerful dogs.
yeah.
However, I'm more terrified of a Chihuahua than I am of a pit bull.
Oh my gosh, yes. I have been bitten by smaller dogs before when I used to be have that fear, just like you said. It's your vibration. It's how you come off. And animals can automatically tell a person's intention.
Oh yeah,
Um, but even if it's just fear, that vibration kind of triggers them as well.
yep.
You might not be a bad person, but afraid of them. And fear as is also a very powerful energy that gives off to anything in this world that gives off a really negative vibration. So I was bitten by a Yorkie.
I was bitten by a Chihuahua when I was maybe two, I think they said, and it bit me right in the face. So, so it's not
My
really a
mom,
fear. It's just I don't trust them because I know how finicky Chihuahuas are.
it's funny because they consider themselves bigger than than anything else. And I've seen my bigger dogs. I have a little papillion now, which he's kind of like a long-haired Chihuahua, but papillions aren't as aggressive or yippy as Chihuahuas, I guess. But he used to terrify my big dog, you know, and I'm like, why? You're 10 times his size. Like, why are you? But it's
It's all about
because
attitude.
it is. And so when you talk about it's the same thing with entities and spirits because I'm telling and maybe that's what the ant has to do in this entire lesson for today. It's, you know, something very small can have a very large impact on everything
Oh yeah.
in our lives. So and there's the ant. Again, I lost it for like an hour
And
there.
then it comes back right as you talk about it.
And that's that's your grandma. That's the healing thing. So so many people have this what's it called? Including myself, imposter syndrome. Yes, for
Yeah,
psychologists out there, where you have so many abilities, just like you, Raymond. I had no idea that you were an author and had all these books. And yet he's so humble and you would never know that he does all these things because he doesn't make a big deal out of it and just like
I don't broadcast it. I don't.
right.
I've been
um
writing for years, and I've published a decent amount of books now, and I don't make a big deal about it. And then there's a gentleman that lives not far from me. He wrote his first book and published it, and then he has it in the newspaper. He's coming on to the news stations and stuff. I'm like, you've written one book, so it's all about. I set a goal to accomplish things that I feel like I want to succeed at in my life to some degree, and as long as I can prove it to myself, that's all that matters.
I think I almost think that people who like when something you hear about it in the abductee world a lot, network as well, a lot, where somebody will have one um experience, which I'm not downplaying that at all. That one experience could have changed their whole life or caused a lot of trauma or whatever. That's not the point. But they have one experience and they go to the news and they go to, all of these things. And I'm glad I didn't with any writing or art or experiences or anything because for this purpose, because I think once you do that, then that kind of defines you from there on out, especially if it
Yeah,
goes really big. And then I think it becomes kind of a distraction to their healing because I've talked to many people who have interviewed there's been many people on this network who've interviewed people like oh my gosh, Travis Walton and people like that. And he's world known for that one experience that was you know tragic in his life, but most people don't appreciate him for very much else, which
yeah.
he does other things, but that's all they know because that's all they know. So I think it almost um inhibits people when
They become known for just one thing when they can accomplish so much more.
exactly, and it becomes a distraction, and that makes up that literally makes up their entire life. So um now you have the rise of the fallen. We were talking about that when we started
Yes.
talking about demons. You got cut off.
Well, what's
Well
interesting is
played.
a lot of the demonic names and stuff, even the ones I use in my book, they were
Aliens.
also ancient gods that were, you know, demonified, for lack of a better term, by the Christian church.
Right.
So we'll leave it at that because if not, I'll end up getting cut off again, and then we'll have to start all over.
In paganism, I know some amazing. See, I somehow write in hate mail too about this. When I say I know people who work with dark entities, no, they're not working with dark entities to curse people. I don't
No,
I don't hang out with bad witches people. So like I don't
I
most
know a
people I
warlock
know.
that works directly with demonic entities,
Yeah,
and he doesn't do it to hurt people.
no.
That is just
There's
his flavor of magic.
and then there's some like myself who I'm capable of working because I have been I guess introduced to that type of energy, not even by choice, but when I was younger and stuff a lot. So I'm aware of it. I'm aware of how to work with it, how not to let it affect me negative. I mean I'm human, so I still get affected sometimes, but I'm also able to work with darker entities sometimes. They can help you with even with like missing persons or cold cases or
Yeah.
whatever, because they're not always, as Raymond said, they're not. What most people don't realize about demons, it's kind of the same like witches and a lot of healers. I'm attracted. I will be drawn to a place where there's about to be a ridiculously large accident, storm, uh, whatever. Not even intentionally, not on purpose. Sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. Or I'll talk to somebody right. I always know I'll be around somebody right before they die.
Yep.
Even strangers. And I know they're gonna die. And
Working
I'm
in
drawn to that
healthcare,
person.
I get drawn to that person, or that person is drawn to me
Yep.
for that reason.
And it's no different with demons or like Mothman or anyone else. And so I think they get a bad rap sometimes. I'm not saying that there aren't bad demonic entities, because yes, of course there are, but anything can be bad. And so I
Most of them
think
are mainly neutral.
exactly. I think most of them on the human plane, they really don't. If they're drawn to an area and then we abuse them, that's usually what happens at haunted places, because they're not necessarily always drawn to that place intentionally. Some of them aren't even intelligent, it's not even an intelligent entity to where they don't have a choice to be, they're literally naturally drawn there. And so I think that's a huge misunderstanding in the paranormal community.
I honestly think that's why I'm drawn to a certain location. I've been there to investigate 3 times. I'm going back in October because I'm drawn to it. I keep going back. No matter what anybody else thinks of it and stuff, I always go back. And that is Bobby Mackey's.
It's funny because earlier when I was talking about Waverly, I kept thinking of Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah, that I've investigated 3 times there, and each experience was different, and that's what I love about it. But also, the last time I went, I made them aware. I was like, "There's somebody hanging out down by the pool tables." So what do? We introduce ourselves, tell them why we're there, and this and that. And then when everybody else is there and they're just hanging out talking, I set a camera down there, just by itself, and through the microphone, it picks up, "Hey Raymond, help us." And unfortunately, it's a paid location. I'm not allowed to move things on, but I go back and I listen to their story and try to collect more of it. Even if that's the only way I can help, that's what I'll do.
I think I think now, I mean, I've always said this, but really, other people like yourself who are highly intuitive, usually are the only ones that understand when on investigations, it's not just making some, well, first of all, nothing likes to be manipulated, but just asking things to, you know, make a sound or knock on something. No, like I'm there to find out whatever truth they want me to and
Yeah,
actually serve a purpose aside from just scaring people. Because again, back to like demonic entities or scary dogs or whatever it is, or redheads. Like
that can be scary in itself.
that's what I mean. Like we're not, you know, um I can relate because my entire life people have wanted in public for no reason. Maybe it's whatever my demeanor. I'm a nice person, like I get along with people. And I talked about that last week. Sometimes there's been so many times that people just come up and like try to jump me or beat me up or whatever.
There's a part of me, it either attracts the good part of somebody. Other times they just want, hey, let's see how far I can push him just to see what he'll do.
Yeah.
And
I
I've,
think I
just
think a lot
thrown
of
past
us
it.
mirror. That's my problem. I mirror. I think I mirror the vibration that others project. And so if that's bad, they're going to see, but it's from themselves. They're going to be, so we're catalysts in the world, basically.
Yeah.
So it makes a person confront themselves, basically, and nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, I get that a lot too, especially working in healthcare. Because
Oh,
some
I
people,
bet.
when I come in, they relax, they stay calm, and they're so happy to have me right there with them as much as possible. Whereas others, I can approach and they go out of their minds. They literally flip out. I've, you know, I've had them come at me, threaten to kill me, everything, working in healthcare. And it's because when they looked and saw what I reflected back, they were not happy
Yeah.
and they become confrontational.
I think that's a huge part of humanity that we haven't mastered yet, clearly.
In time. In time. Well, not right now, but in time.
Oh so while that's crazy. I don't even know if you could see this. Anyways, so while you were talking about, like, I wasn't even looking at my paper, and I drew these hold on, I don't know if you could see. I drew these two circles, and it looks like eyeballs.
That's funny.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I don't know what that. Uh, well, maybe, um, there's always things watching in this world, um, even if it's ourselves, our higher consciousness, and we'll be hard on ourselves for things. But as far as like other entities, there's always something else there that will remind you at some point, if how you treat someone, or how you come off or present yourself, or what have you. um, Bobby Mackey's, I've seen that on.
It's been on a few different shows.
I haven't seen it. I've seen it on really old, like in the 90s maybe, when they first started doing, I think even Unsolved Mysteries for a while there had like a haunted series.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember it from back then.
I loved Unsolved Mysteries. That show used to trip me out so bad, and I loved every second of it.
I I loved it until one time, they always had like missing people, or like cold cases, everything. For those of you that don't have never seen it, because it did stop airing news shows. What was it? Maybe early 2000s. They put them back out now though.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, I do believe.
But I think as far as network TV, it stopped back in like the early 2000s. So for those of you that don't know, Unsolved Mysteries, they had everything from cryptids to murders to
Hauntings to
hauntings.
UFOs to,
Yeah,
you
anything.
know, stories
Who's the
about
guy
serial
that was the
killers.
narrator?
Robert Stock.
Yeah, so his voice. See, if you're in another country and
It
you've never
was
heard of Unsolved
very
Mysteries,
haunting.
yes. And he was always like walking in his it was like one of those dusters, like a
Yeah,
detective would
he looked
wear,
like the
like.
aggressive crime dog.
Yes, yes.
He had a
Um,
great big old trench coat on with his hands in his pockets.
yeah. And usually under like a street light or something, just walking,
Yeah.
and it's
I
so
actually kept
creepy.
waiting for him to be like, "Hey, man, you want to watch?" It was that kind of trench coat. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, he was but his voice is very, very unique. Like, if
He
I hear
actually
that.
does. He actually has his voice on Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Really?
Yes, he
I think
plays
I
one of the
remember that.
FBI agents.
Yeah, he's another one of those like oh my gosh, I can't think of who I was going to say that always narrates like the Lion King and stuff.
James Earl Jones.
Yeah, he died, didn't he, recently? Or maybe during the shutdown, I think.
No, actually, he
He's still
just
alive.
recently retired from doing the voice of Darth Vader.
Oh, who am I thinking of? I'm sure it was him that um but yeah, Unsolved Mysteries was I love that show, but I had a teacher once and it was years later. We moved and everything to another state and it was like 4 or 5 years later I was watching Unsolved Mysteries about this guy who like had numerous wives and all this stuff and his last wife um but he was a serial killer and they showed his last wife who I'm sure I don't think she was involved. I mean, I don't think any of those wives were involved or whatever, but it showed an actual on Unsolved Mysteries they would show recreated scenes with actors, but then they would also show real photos or footage if they had it or images or whatever. And so one of the actual images, I was like, that was my teacher. Oh my god, she's married to a serial killer. Like, what?
Wow, that's crazy.
I zoomed in, like when
Yeah.
I finally like I recorded, I went to all this trouble, recorded it on a big VCR, like try to, like
Oh, I remember big cigars. God, we're getting old.
so so things like that, but that's how they would catch killers. And so people, the point was people watching these shows would call in to their tip, the FBI tip line or whatever,
Yep,
like local police department, where whoever it was that was investigating would call in about these crimes and they would like all their archives were aired and stuff. And so oh, that gives me a new idea. See, I started that last year with mediums. So, see, Raymond, we have a new
and we were talking
project.
about your your live readings for cold cases earlier.
Yeah. If I can't get, local help, I could still do so what I started last year on Parapost actually network was um it was called Decomposed
I
with
remember it.
Trish
Yeah,
and initially that was my plan and I had mediums that because that's the thing we all get different messages in different ways. So my theory was if you get a bunch of them from different places, especially closer states or countries or whatever, um each of them might get information that adds to this puzzle of certain cases. And so that was my purpose for that. That was my intention for that. And and I was going to have like a way for people to contact us either anonymously or not or whatever um if it resonated with them. And so um and I actually have had a few other random mediums pop up in my radar recently that have had interest in that.
that's cool.
So let us know out there and in the world if that's something you would be interested in because I think I think things like that puts our abilities and gifts to better use than um, a lot of times than just talking about the cases.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely something I'm interested in. I've known a few investigators that were given cold cases to work on, and I would just start sending messages like, "This is what I got," and I would know nothing.
Yeah.
I would have an area. That was it.
Hmm.
And I would
And
start describing things, and then I would take and find it on Google Maps and send them screenshots and say, "This is the area to look."
yeah. And
So
I've done that before and as I said sometimes local local police officers, things like that, don't necessarily, which I get it, a lot of them say they have hundreds of psychics call in with tips or whatever, and not all of them are um valid. But my thing is, unless there's like a reward, then what would be my agenda to do? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what would be my agenda to do that? To literally go out of my way to contact a person to help them find someone like in their family or their whatever. If I'm not getting anything,
Yeah.
there's we don't just do that to play some sick prank on people. It's not.
I was one of those kids that when we watched Unsolved Mysteries and they would talk about code cases, you would hear me start talking about things.
Yeah, in hindsight, I probably was too. I just didn't realize it at the time because I blocked out a lot of my, even back then when I was little, growing up, there was a
For
lot
the
of
most
traumatic
part,
things.
since about 3 or 4, most things are fairly clear. Because I remember learning to tie my shoes. I remember learning to read that early. And I remember, family things. And I remember movies being watched with my mom and, her drawing dinosaurs on our bedroom wall. And this is at a house that I can still take you to that is located in Ohio. And I don't need a map to take you there.
Wow. I've found myself going, and I think a lot of people are and don't even realize it, which is why the ancestry thing is so important. I Since I've been doing that, I find myself, I'm like, wow, I've been there before, when I find relatives and stuff that have like been, even like New Orleans. It was probably 6 months after I started, um, well, on chasing, that I realized that a lot of my family had founded some of the original towns in Louisiana, which I had no idea, but I think we're always drawn back to where we came from, and where we came from, meaning it follows your DNA, quite
Yeah.
literally. So those places you're drawn to them because part of your DNA remembers that. So I always say with psychics, like, I don't believe in psychics. I believe that either something is giving outside of ourselves is giving us that information, or that we have already lived that, meaning in a past life or one of your relatives. um
I went to New Orleans about 8 years ago. My first time ever being there. Found a parking lot. I parked, paid for it, locked my vehicle up, started walking, and I could find my way all the way through the French Quarter.
yeah, so you've probably either lived there before or one of your relatives did.
Yep. And however, New Orleans is not a place that I can openly walk into, but I do love the city. There are stipulations to that. We won't get into that on here.
Oh goodness. You know, that's since I have multiple DNAs, I have kind of conflictions everywhere I go because there's places, literally part of me can't or shouldn't go or is not
Yeah.
welcome to, but then the other half of me is drawn to. So
Yeah.
it's a constant
It's a constant conflict.
inner turmoil with me since since
That's like
I'm a
me in
tribrid,
Ireland.
I guess.
I want to go to Ireland so badly I can taste it. But I know I'd never be sober enough to find the airport home until they threw me out.
Right.
So that's why I haven't made it yet.
That's funny. I would love to go there as well as Scotland.
Yeah.
And I also have had, after one of my near death experiences, I learned how to read. Well, I could read. I didn't learn how. It just came to me. Hieroglyphics. So I had this huge urge, very
Nice.
strong urge to go
Go
to
to
South
Egypt.
America and Egypt. Yeah. But it's still pretty dangerous in some places there um, at the moment. So one day I'll travel the world. Um,
Yeah.
Raymond, where is, I will also put it in um, on my site and in the description of your website.
It is raymondgnewsome.com, all one word, and it will take you to, you know, all the links toward my books. I have everything from children's books to horror novels, well, horror stories.
Children's books. I didn't
Yeah,
even see those.
yeah. There is The Adventures of Pipsqueak and Bob. It is based on my son and my nephew and my oldest daughter. And it's just, it was little story. It started out as little stories that they told me about the games that they were playing while they were growing up. And they used to call my nephew Pipsqueak all the time. And one day my son chimes in and my brother looks at him and says, "What do you want to be Pipsqueak too?" He said, "No, I'm Bob." And so, that that is literally how Pipsqueak and Bob was born.
That's funny. I thought you were going to say it was about like an evil chihuahua.
No. But there is a massive full mastiff mix in there called Meatball, and the chapter is
Oh, that's
called
funny.
the Monstrous Meatball. So
That's funny.
that was an actual dog that we had, and the kids used to put a pony saddle on him and ride him around because he was that big.
I used to do that to my dog when I was little. Um, and you were telling me, so when I tried to go on, you said to use
Barnes and
Barnes and
Noble,
Noble,
yes,
yes, for his books, because otherwise, some of them on Amazon, it says not available or something that it
or they're
won't.
through third party,
Right.
but sellers. The only one that you can directly buy as far as a print copy through Amazon without issue is The Witches of um, Raven Hollow, and that's because I had to publish it in a different manner, so it is directly available through Amazon.
That's the one I want to read as well because, as my middle name is Lenore, like Raven in
Yeah,
Edgar Allan Poe. So I've always had a close connection. I always run into places and people and things that relate to that, and of course witches. So that one's exciting to me. But
it's
Raymond,
it's a short story, but it is very eventful, and I will promise you that the witches on there do not play nice when they have to. So,
when they have to.
yeah, when they have to take and defend themselves, they do not play fair. In fact, the youngest
And I
one
always
is the
tell
most
people that
violent.
I'm like every witch I've ever known, people literally underestimate a lot about us because one, uh, yes, we have the entire creed, like harm to none and things like that. But you best believe
We also have a
that
creed that
doesn't
says,
count.
"Give
Like if
no shit,
someone
take no shit."
Exactly. If someone keeps on and keeps on pushing me, or my family or my kids or what have you, I mean, it's one of those I wish a bitch would. Like I can still reflect that again, like we are talking about, back onto the person sending that negative energy. And let me tell you, because I've experienced this as well when I was younger and used to have negative thoughts towards people, that's how I know. Um, Let me tell you, if someone who is way more powerful than me were to reflect that back then to me, it probably would have killed me. Actually, that's probably how I died almost a few times. So
It's
so
definitely one of those F around and find out situations.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that's the thing. Like, it's not that they're cursing you or doing like I don't do any of that. Anything I have ever done has been for self-healing or like moon rituals or things like that. It has nothing to do with other people at all in my life. Um, but before I embraced that part of me, as I said when I was younger, if I had bad thoughts, when I was a teenager or in college or wherever, like if I had negative thoughts enough towards a person, and I was literally intentionally sending that to them, that's really kind of a curse. And so I mean it is a curse. And so yes, when witches have had enough, um and they send that back to a person, that's usually when it, because people do really bad things. I mean,
Oh
and
yeah,
most even Christians and whoever, when they're thinking bad thoughts about somebody or saying, I hate that person. I hate that you can do like even saying things about their health or their looks or anything can be a spell, and you can literally be causing a person to be sick or to, I don't know, lose their hair or do anything like that. But when that comes back to you,
it's
it's
going to be 3 times worse.
exactly. It is. Um, Raymond, it has been an absolute pleasure. I would love to have you back on in the future. It's been almost two
I
hours.
would
It
love
hasn't
to come
seemed like
back.
it.
I know 2 hours passed by fast, and we've just been having a conversation.
You'll have to let me know when you're going to come to the Missouri area. So we could go to gosh, there's so many places there. Um in the future, and I will post all of Raymond's, I'll post his links and everything obviously on my page and in the bio for later. um I'm looking forward to being able to be in the chat room. So of
Yeah,
course
it's
this
going to
will
be a
already be
different
on later.
experience, isn't it?
Yeah, because I've never been able to. People used to get mad. Well, first of all, I never see on StreamYard. It won't allow us to see a lot of the
Comments,
chat
yeah.
responses from Facebook for whatever reason. So I didn't realize that until recently. People just thought I was ignoring them, and I wasn't. I just never saw them, and so um,
I
so I
know how
won't be able to
StreamYard
watch
works,
that.
so I'll say this or that and stuff, but then I'll take and watch, and if it's not noticed, then I'm like, okay, then it's not showing up for them,
Yeah,
so I just let it
yeah.
roll.
So we will. I don't know what I'm doing next week because I don't know where I'm going to be. So for all of you out there listening, thank you for supporting me. Go check out Raymond's website and buy his books, and also look into his paranormal group. It seems really interesting. Um, and we have a lot in common, so it's been fun talking to you. I'll let you know what the mystery soldier was trying to tell tell me earlier, if that comes to me. And for the rest of you, have a wonderful week. When we come back, it'll already be May, I think.
Yes,
I think that's next
because
Monday.
the 30th is Sunday. May
Yeah.
1st is Monday.
Duh. And the global ghost hunt is the 4th,
4th through the 14th.
4th through the 14th.
Yep.
So for
I
all of
will
you out
be
there interested,
on May 9th. I'm actually the only one that day, so.
May 9th. On what? On your own?
No,
Um,
it'll be through, Parapost and
okay.
Global Ghost Hunt and, a few other networks, but, it will be available to be shared out, to be watched, and it'll be a lot of fun.
And that's
We
the
had,
one from Octagon Hall, correct?
and then
So I'll
after that,
watch
I'll start
that, and
sharing
then I'll
my
probably get more information for you.
wonderful videos. Yeah. Well, when you get to see the other videos and stuff that I've shot that I'm actually going to share out, because some of them I won't, some of it might help make it a little bit more apparent as well. So, including the 50-minute Estes method.
Oh yes, That's interesting. So, and for those of you out there, watch that as well. And so here's something new. Since you know this is going to happen, um, message Raymond, um, anything you pick up, anything that comes to mind, any random doodles you make, any images you see, anything you hear, um, that that comes to you, because we also like to hear that during investigations, because we might miss it because there's
Absolutely.
a lot going on. It's very hard, especially when you're in a place with a lot of activity